Hey guys, Marshall from Going Gear, SHOT Show 2016 in Las Vegas, here in the Spyderco booth, obviously, because I have Sal and Eric Glesser from Spyderco. So Sal, founder and owner of Spyderco, Eric, his son, right? Is that an accurate description? Yeah. And so we did the knife video earlier where Eric went over the new knives, and we do that every year, and we like doing that. But I asked him a couple of questions, and he said, man, that was pretty fun talking about our processes and explaining that. So we're going to do a whole video of that kind of stuff, just picking these guys' brains and not necessarily talking about specific models, but talking about more high-level views, right? Yeah.
Sounds good.
Excellent. Okay. So I'm going to start off with a super hardcore question. What knife is in your pocket right now?
It's in the prototype case. I have nothing in it.
Oh no.
I have a polio.
There you go.
I put the knife in the prototype case.
I have a Caribbean with LC200N, and I have a Bird Starling with G10 and CTS BD1.
There you go. So at least he has two.
Native.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So he has two knives, and then you can just take one of those, and we'll pretend that was yours. So something that we had kind of talked about earlier that I wanted to get a little bit deeper into was knockoffs. You know, you guys have all that information on your website about how to identify a knockoff, and I wanted to get a little bit deeper into that. Do you guys see that as a big problem?
You want to? Go ahead.
We can both discuss it, but we discuss it quite a bit. It's not only a big problem for us, it's a big problem for all industries. You know, the counterfeiting problem is a problem for everything from knives to baby carriages. There's companies that develop a good reputation and a good name, and then there are companies that, usually out of China, that will make a counterfeit, and they're getting better, so you know you can't tell one steel from another by looking at it, so you don't know what really is in there. But it hurts our reputation when somebody buys one and they don't get the performance or the longevity that they expect. But it's a bigger problem than most people are aware of. I was talking to a guy from China, worked for a Chinese knife company, and we were discussing this on a British forum. And when he found out who I was, he said, "Oh, Spyderco. I love Spyderco. I have a whole collection of Spydercos. One day I'll own a real one."
Oh no.
You know, on another note, you know, they are a big problem, but we diligently try to defend our marks wherever we can. We do it by many different fronts and different ways, whether it's IP protection with patents and trademarks, or trying to stop stuff at the borders, or trying to take things off of online. We're constantly defending our marks, working with lawyers to try to do that. Another thing that we do is we do constant CQI, constant quality improvement. And that certainly helps when you're fighting the knockoffs. We're doing something new all the time. We're developing the product. We're trying to stay ahead of the flow. If you try to hold back the river, you'll get pebbled into a pebble. And so what we try to do is flow straight ahead and keep going while trying to defend the mark.
Make it harder for them to copy by just constantly changing it.
Well, the problem
is
is
better too, not just change. It has to get better.
Right.
the problem is a little complicated because a lot of the people that buy counterfeits want the real thing.
Right.
And they feel like they've been robbed. But most of the people that buy counterfeits know they're buying counterfeits. And they're just trying to capture the design. Even if the materials are a lower quality, they still feel that they're saving money. And the thinking, while illogical, is that if I like the counterfeit, then I'll go buy a real one. But
Sure.
they're not as likely going to like the counterfeit because it's a counterfeit.
Right.
And
they don't have the quality.
the problem is increasing. They're all coming from China, and they're copying more and more of our designs. And now Alibaba has managed to get a foothold in America, and so we can't really affect them. So if you go on Alibaba, for example, you'll see Spyderco shoes, Spyderco
I didn't know you were
hair
branching out.
dryers. No, they just use our name for
Right.
anything and everything that they think they can sell. So we were hoping that our government would help with the problem, but and we even had an audience with the House of Representatives where we spoke along with a few other companies that are having a similar problem. But I guess they don't think it's as important as some other things that they're focusing on.
Well, it's certainly going to be a tough battle to fight. It's just like trying to stop drugs from coming over the border or take weapons out of prisons. It's a constant fight that you have to stay on top of, and you got to erode the problem as much as possible, like eroding away the shore. And we try to stay on it all the time.
As long as there's money in it, somebody's going to try to do it.
Yeah, unfortunately.
It's a criminal activity,
Yeah.
you know.
So,
But, there is one other thing. You're also dealing with another way of thinking. When Eric and I first went into China about 15 years ago, and we were going into the different factories, we would look up on their board that they have of all their models, and I'll say, "Oh, there's a Chris Reeve design," and Eric would say, "Well, there's one of your designs, Dad," and I said, "Well, there's a Hinderer design. Oh, Eric, there's one of your designs," and then the owner of the company would come out, and in all sincerity, he would say, "Thank you for creating such good designs that we can use to make money."
It's different philosophies.
So they don't see that as intellectual property that is owned. Now you try to steal a piece of land and they're going to fight to the death, but they just don't see intellectual property as something that isn't available to everyone.
talking to some of the other manufacturers, especially some of the guys that are doing patented things over in China, using electronics and technology and things like that, it seems like China is getting better for patent protection. Are you guys seeing that at all?
They are trying to get with the real world. We patent in China. We trademark in China. It's just going to be a long process.
Yeah. But they're getting better. They are getting better. I have to give them credit on that.
So when we're talking about counterfeits, are you talking about things with the Spyderco name on them?
Oh, they put Spyderco Golden, Colorado, USA. And they'll put CPM S30V, even if it's made out of camel dung.
You know, and it's not just the trademark names and logos. Some of our intellectual properties like locks and things like that, materials. And so it's across the board.
How much of a problem do you see of basically copies without the Spyderco trademarks and names on them?
They don't do that much anymore. They used to.
Well, it's not the same product for them anymore. For the consumer, you're really buying a further departure from a real Spyderco, and so it doesn't seem like that's as big of a problem currently, but it'll be a problem as well. It's really that reputation of our brand, our logo, with our design that they're trying to get.
So they want all of it.
They want all of it.
They would love to see us disappear, and then they could assume the role.
So obviously you manufacture in China.
We do.
We do.
But you manufacture in Taiwan.
We do.
Manufacture in the U.S.
We do.
You're in Italy.
Italy and
Where
Japan.
else? And Japan.
Yes. And we've been working with the same people in Japan for 35 years. 35 years.
Yeah.
So how has manufacturing all over the world affected you and affected your brand?
Well, for one, they all have different capabilities. For us, it's not the country of origin, it's the people. The people make all the difference. And so for us, we were very fortunate to get to work with some very talented, hardworking people for a long time, and that's where a lot of the success comes from. Also, though, they have their different things that they're good at. For example, in Japan, they're very good at backlocks. We consider ourselves as making some of the best backlocks in the world. For China, they bring a tremendous value to the market if you can do it correctly. For Italy, you can get materials, European materials, and they're great at slip joints. And for America, we have our own capabilities. And so there's a lot of diversity in there as well. So there's a lot of reasons why we do it. Also you have a more controlled supply. If an earthquake, were to happen somewhere and slow down a facility, you're not completely out of business. It doesn't hurt your dealers, your distributors, your consumer can still get a product. And so there are a lot of reasons why we manufacture all around the world.
Are there any other countries that you're trying to go into?
As Eric said, we don't look at the country, we look at the maker.
Any other makers you're trying to work with?
We just found another one in China that looks to be of good quality, and so we'll start to explore that. Other than that, our quality standards are very high,
Yes.
and meeting those standards are difficult for most people. In fact, if you're making knives for Spyderco, then that qualifies you to make knives for anybody, and they'll use that as a selling feature. Because we are tough to work for. We are pretty tough to work for.
At least you admit it.
Well, we got really high tolerances, and in some cases, like in our U.S. factory, we're holding 2/10 on some parts, and so it's challenging. And if a product is not to our standards, it goes back or it gets seconded.
We certainly have our standards. We're not going to put an inferior product out on the market.
Yeah, we work for the end-line user, the person that cuts with a knife, and everything else that we're involved with, dealers, distributors, makers, shipping, steel, foundries, we all work for the end-line user. And we have to remember that no matter what, because they're the guys paying the bills.
Yeah, we're making a material that saves lives and can be dangerous if used improperly, or if it fails, it can be dangerous. And so we take our product line very seriously for what we're delivering. On a side note, for the countries of origin, though, our bird brand is there so we can help develop good makers. Sometimes they're not quite to the standard that we were hoping for, but we're going to get there. And so we can develop that growth of that maker through the bird brand and also bring a tremendous value to the market at a good quality.
So getting away from manufacturing for a second, you both design knives. You look over in that prototype case, there's some pretty outlandish, elaborate designs in there. Outlandish maybe not the right word, but there's some elaborate, complex designs in there. When you're designing, how do you balance that? Because you're also the manufacturer, thinking about how elaborate a design needs to be versus, hey, I need to actually make this thing and make it at a reasonable price point.
We do both. We're working all the time on designs, and some of them I'm designing and driving, some of them he's designing and driving. Sometimes we'll both work on a design for a long time, changing things incrementally, a tenth of a millimeter at a time, and making a plastic model and then checking it again and making another plastic model, and just slowly refine it until we're happy with it. We also find that we have our particular preferences. I'm all about function, and he's pretty much about function. And so we tend to lean towards certain things, and that's one of the reasons we have collaborations, because we can provide the customer with variety of design, and we'll make them all to the top quality standards. And some people will collect knives made by this collaborator or that collaborator, and so it kind of helps all the way around.
We're certainly performance-based, and so we're not just drawing pretty pictures. We're using them, and we're performance-based. But another reason why we do so much is that there's still a lot to do. The knife industry is very old, but it's still being developed all the time. Everything you see on a knife was developed or invented by somebody. Everything you see in life was, at least in the manufacturing world, was invented by somebody. And so oftentimes we'll come out with a product because it has some tiny little evolutionary development to push the knife further, but we're continuing to push on all different levels and fronts.
Do you have any favorite materials that you like to work with as a designer?
Ooh, we do a lot of work with steel. We work with different foundries, probably a dozen foundries all over the world. In some cases, they'll even develop steels that we've asked for or that we want. We will gravitate towards the highest performing steels that are available. I personally like the powdered metals, but I also like 52-100. You know, it's a nice simple carbon steel, but I forged it. I like cutting with it. It gets very sharp. So our attitude towards a lot of these materials is all good, just different. You know, we try to keep our knives relatively light, but relatively strong.
Sure.
You know, no more than necessary, but no less than perfect is kind of a line we try to draw. And so my personal preferences are lean more towards cut. You know, pull it out, open, cut, put it away, and get on with what you're doing.
So simple, functional designs.
Yes, we do occasionally. We'll do something pretty, but our collaborators are better at that, at creating eye appeal.
There's some interesting things over there.
Yes, there are. But there's also market need.
Yeah.
You know, this particular country doesn't allow knives over a certain length or doesn't allow locks. This other country doesn't allow one-hand opening. And so a lot of times we'll design for a specific market. You know, you're going to make a Danish knife, it better not be more than 7 centimeters in blade length, and they really don't like locks or one-hand open. So we design for that market.
Right.
You know, and so we know our customer is king, and that's who we try to service.
You know, I'm going to touch on the materials thing too. When a lot of what we do, we like G10s, carbon fibers, titaniums, lightweight handles. These are materials that aren't going to change their size and shape very much. They're going to go through very obstinate environments, and they're going to stay true. They're lightweight. Their manufacturability is there, and so those four, for example, are good materials to work with. Another thing that you see from us a lot is in our lightweights, we'll bring a very high performance steel, like a 110V, for example, and put it into a lightweight handle. This is going to give you a less expensive knife that's going to perform very well at a lower cost. Sometimes around the office we joke about, you know, we're putting a Ferrari engine in a little inexpensive car, but that's what you're getting. And so that's something we like to offer as well.
How often are you two out in the shop actually grinding and cutting and doing all of that? Do you just do the designing, or do you do any of the making?
Oh, we've done a lot of the making. We're not doing it as much anymore. We've got some really skilled people. So now we're usually in the design end and testing end. And we have a pretty extensive testing lab. We own a Catra machine. We have a dedicated braking machine. And so when we design a knife, if it's going to have a particular function, then we have to build to that function. A heavy-duty knife has to hold 100 inch-pounds of lock strength per inch of blade. So if it's a 4-inch knife, you know, it's got to hold 400 inch-pounds. You know, you get into Marshall Bladecraft knives, and the standard is higher. And that will govern a lot of the design itself, is who's going to buy this knife, what are they going to use it for, and will it serve their needs. You know, in some cases it might be a paramedic that needs a certain kind of a knife. In another case it might be a policeman that is trying to save his life. And so we think about that, and we'll work on the design for a long time. I've got a couple of designs in that case I've worked on for a couple of years. You know, Eric and I worked on the Tenacious for more than a year. You know, just continually refining, discussing, sometimes arguing,
Debating.
until we get it the way that we think it needs to be. And if we make a mistake and the knife needs some improvement, that's where CQI comes in. We're not afraid to change a mold. We're not afraid to make it bigger, smaller, stronger, lighter, depending on the reaction of the customer.
You know, on another note, and I hate to keep chiming in here, but I think we both try to stay in tune with manufacturing as much as possible. We know what our machines can do. We know the capabilities. We're on the factory floor every chance we can, so that we can keep up to date. So we know what our capabilities are in that designing. We meet with our suppliers every year, talk to them with the developments that they're doing. It's important that we know about manufacturing when we're doing that designing.
I think that's important, because I imagine you probably see the disconnect with the custom makers, or not all the custom makers, but guys who necessarily haven't worked in the production world, that they make this design and they take it to somebody and they say, hey, this is going to be a $2,000 production knife. That's not very feasible. So you're in the entire process, so that probably helps a lot in design. Right.
Yeah, we do a lot of research before we come out with a model. We're into the steels, we're into the tolerances, we're heavily into ergonomics, and we're always developing and refining the processes, the materials, the function, and we've got a lot of great teachers. I learned a lot about edge geometry from Ed Schemp and Wayne Goddard.
Yep.
I learned a lot about heat treating from Phil Wilson. Gail Bradley was a 2-time world cutting champion. He teaches us a lot about high performance matter separation. And so we grab the information, the knowledge wherever it's available and try to apply it.
Has new technology with social media and YouTube and all of that, seeing how many makers are out there and all the different things that they're doing, has that influenced you in any way?
To a certain extent,
You have to be aware
Yeah,
of what's
you have-
going on in our industry and around you. And so we're always keeping our ear to the ground as much as possible. And we have a passion for it.
Right.
I know you're both on the forums and responding to people's questions.
He
And
responds more than me, but I'm on there all the time.
We feel that anything that we can learn from our customer base is important. We may not always agree. We may have more knowledge than they do. And, the knife industry, when you get involved with a passion, is kind of like a grade school. You first, I love knives. I like daggers because they look cool. And then you find out, well, daggers are pretty hard to carry around and use for dinner. And so, then you also like this knife or that knife. And the more you learn, it's first grade, second grade, third grade. And before you know it, you amass a fair amount of knowledge that allows you another perspective when you look at the world of knives. When you've got geography, for example, various knife designs were created originally for different functions. They may have been agricultural, they may have been for defense or even offense. And so the more you learn, the more you are affected by what you learn.
so I can probably guess your answer to this question. How did you get started in knife making?
I was always a knife nut, even as a child, and then at a certain stage in my life, there was an opportunity. I'd been in business. There was an opportunity to get involved in the knife industry. We started out making knife sharpeners, and what we say is first we made things sharp, and then we made sharp things. So in the development of sharpeners and creating that high performance edge, we never forgot that. We designed a knife from the edge out.
Yeah.
But I do love what I do.
Genetics, you just walked in the door and there you go, you're ready to go.
Yep, always loved it.
So what did you do before you got into the sharpeners?
Oh, I've done a number of things. I built aerospace parts for a while, very close tolerance, government.
So machining background.
Some machining background and chemistry background. I made circuit boards, so I had a lot of involvement with the various fluids that are used to change the shape of materials. I was a cabinet maker for a while. That taught me a lot about building and art. And then, like most people, I've done all the, short order cook and swept out movie theaters and, just.
I'm with you on that. I was an usher too.
Yeah, you do what you have to do. I spent a lot of time in school. I was a professional student for a while. I kept changing majors because it was something else I wanted to learn.
What was your eventual education in?
Mostly psychology and philosophy. I was a beekeeper. I forged knives. I learned how to shave with
As a living, a beekeeper?
No, it was just a hobby.
Okay.
Yeah, but I read I wanted to be a beekeeper. I read a book. I built my own hives. I caught my own swarms and built my own apiary. Persistence is king, and passion is the spice that makes things excellent. I've seen him spend days trying to develop a little car because he was going to beat the record for his school, and
you won.
And he did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are competitive.
Yeah.
And automotive background a little bit, mostly driving, and so I've got a well-rounded education. I've done a lot of traveling. He's done a lot of traveling, and all of those things go together to make up what we do and how we think about things.
Do you get to travel for pleasure anymore?
Not as much as we like, but sometimes we'll try to take pleasure in the travel. If you're off,
an extra day or two.
take an extra day and go visit, Mount Fuji or something like that. But even here, I took a walk and looked at guns.
Yeah. Or go out to Red Rock or Hoover Dam, or
we've
take
done
the
that.
opportunity when you can.
I enjoy it a lot, though, so it's not as bad as it sounds. I mean, getting to travel around and do what we're doing, even working the show here, I get to stand across from the counter and present what we've been working so hard on to the consumer, whoever it is, and get that reaction back. I mean,
It's a good feeling.
Oh, it's a great feeling. That's a wonderful thing. Or hear the stories. That knife saved my life, or something. That's tough to beat.
Especially when they don't know who you are and they talk about how great something is, and you're like, yes, they don't know who I am and they're giving me all these compliments.
We try to undersell and overdeliver.
Yeah.
Man who beat on own chest knocks self over backwards kind of thing.
I think that's everything I have. Is there anything that you guys wanted to touch on, or anything you want to get out there and clear the air and make public?
Oh, I think we're pretty transparent.
Yeah.
I've
been on the forums. I've seen.
We say it like it is, and if we screw up, we screw up. We just we believe that being honest and transparent with your customer is our way. It may not be everybody's way, but it's our way. And so we always try to do the right things for the right reasons. Spyderco as a company is pretty unusual. We have great staff, and they stay with us many years. We've got some people pushing 30 years, and we appreciate what they do. They appreciate what we do. We have products that percentages of sales go to various areas for research. We have an Alzheimer's knife, we have a Parkinson's knife, we make blades for saving whales, we have a cancer knife. I mean, it's just, we've been shipping knives to the Middle East for our troops since 2003. Every month we have a lottery. We make a special knife that you can't buy. It's only for our troops in the Middle East, and they submit their letters and their requests. We read all their letters. My wife signs all the letters that we send back, and we try to support our military, our law enforcement, all the save and serve community, because that's a good percentage of our market. If performance makes a difference, we're your huckleberry, and that's what we focus on.
I actually do have another question. If you're only known for one of your designs, what's your baby?
Oh, I don't know. I get a lot of credit for the Mannix. That's something that I pretty much did completely on my own. We do some like the paramilitary where we kind of joint together on them. But the Mannix has been good.
Forget about the credit. What's your favorite?
Oh, my favorite. It's like steel. They're all good, just different. I mean, there's so many purposes and uses and carries, and I don't think I could pick a favorite.
How about you? Are you going to give me a non-cop-out answer?
Oh, kind of a non-cop-out. I really like the military. It was a great project, and we refined it over a long period of time and improved it until it pretty much did what it needed to do. And we make varieties and materials, but it's a pretty mainstay knife. The Endura and the Delica are some of our more popular models that I designed originally, and then he helped me with the later versions. But remember, we're always working on something.
Right.
We work on 100 knives at any given time, and so we're always carrying prototypes. And that's how we find out what needs to be refined or adjusted. And then we'll meet on it. We have lunch just about every day. We have our meetings that we have together, and we'll sit down with the knives in front of us, and that's when we make our decisions. We're very hands-on. We know that we pick the steels, and we pick the materials, and we pick the locks, and we pick the makers, and so we have a pretty good.
That didn't sound so good.
Somebody dropped their watch. And so for us, since we're so involved in the industry and the product, I think it kind of gives us an edge. There's a lot of people where knives are just a commodity. It's a number on a spreadsheet. And this one's better because it sells better.
Yep.
And that's not the way we look at it.
It's good to see a father and son that have been able to work together for so long. I mean, how long have you been working together?
Well, I look at it as my whole life. We want seamless transition. Our values should be the same so that our consumer base, our employees, our suppliers, the world can see the same values from both of us, and that's important to us.
And we learn from others. In Japan, we have a maker we've been working with for a long time. I work with the grandfather and the father, and he works with the son. And they're doing the same thing. Our Italian makers are second generation. And so it's a long-term tradition.
So are you ever going to let him take over?
You better.
Have you set up your plan of succession?
We've been doing it for the last 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real slow thing. We're not trying to just make it happen all at once. It's been a long process.
No date set yet?
Well, hopefully I'll be around for a little while, but each year he takes on more. He's taking on personnel. He's taking on the manufacturing. I threw him in the factory when we started with Walmart because we needed more discipline, and I felt that I didn't have the time to do it, and he had no choice. So, Eric, if we're going to do Walmart, you have to get in the factory, and you have to learn how to make every part and streamline the operation and make sure that we can deliver the quantities that they require. And he did, and we did, and so it worked out real well. So now he works very closely with our factory manager, and every process in the factory he's familiar with, and eventually he'll be there by himself, and then he'll have it all.
What do you think about that? Are you a little scared?
I don't know. I've been learning a long time. I like going to him, asking for advice, bringing up problems. It's great. So every minute I can have his help, I'm going to.
I also have the history. I remember we made something like that back in 1981, and or this guy designed that knife, and having the history helps explain why something develops and evolves the way it does.
Right. You have the experience.
Right. And I try to share that.
I remember he used to drive me to the bus every morning for years, which was quite a ride because we're up in the high mountains, and that was his opportunity to trap me and push his stuff into my brain. But I enjoy every minute I get to spend with him. We typically meet every day. We work together. We're talking every single day.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. I'm trying to groom my children to take over my business eventually, but they're only 4 and 2. So yeah, I think I've got a while, but I'm trying to push flashlights and knives into their head as much as I can.
He got his first knife when he was 4. It wasn't very sharp, but he learned how to open it with one hand, and
I have a son. He's 7, and you have to get them involved. You have to have them around. If you don't, then they're not going to have any interest. And so I'm hoping that we can go another generation as well. And so I bring him into the office as much as possible and get him around my mom and my dad as much as possible, and try to influence that.
I thought we were wrapped up, but we went on for another 10 or 15 minutes.
It's fine. I enjoy talking about this stuff.
I enjoy it too. It was genuinely a pleasure. I really appreciate both your time. Thank you.
thank you much.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thanks, everybody. I appreciate this.